Welcome to day 2 of the UK Public Sector Transformation Awards. It's the same as the first day of our event. We've not done anything like this before. Please bear with us if there are technical difficulties. Hopefully the tech gods will smile on us again today. This is a showcase. The judging of the awards has been done. Everybody you see here today is a winner of an iESE award. We'll find out in the autumn which category of award, whether it's gold, silver or bronze. Our finalists have created videos that showcase their award-winning nominations, and they'll become available as their session begins. You can see these on our YouTube channel. Website link is below. All videos will be pulled into a special edition of Transform magazine, which will be available Wednesday afternoon. Don't forget that you can tweet from wherever you are, home or in the office, and share the success of your organisation and your colleagues. So we're here to celebrate. Make sure you use that hashtag iESE Awards 21 below. First up, we've got Transformation in Health and Social Care. I'm going to invite John Comber, my co-host, to come online and introduce our guests. John.
Good morning and welcome. I have the pleasure of announcing the finalists for the Transformation in Health and Social Care category. Submissions can be based upon transforming access to services, remodelling the services, working in partnership, or a combination of all three. The winning applications will have demonstrated the greatest impact for customers of health and social care. I'm now going to announce the award finalists, and then I will invite the officers to join us. So the finalists in this category are Dudley Metropolitan Borough Council for their project Rita, East Ayrshire Council Health and Social Care Partnership, and Lancashire County Council Capacity Tracker. And if I invite for Dudley Metropolitan Borough Council Matt Bauscher and Marie Spittle to join us. Good morning. And for East Ayrshire Council Deborah Brady and Lorraine Dakeen to join us. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
And for Lancashire County Council, Ian Crabtree and Sumaya Sufi to join us.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. I'm going to ask each of the finalists to take about 5 minutes to scope their project, tell us what it's about, how it affected customers and their communities, and just some of the outcomes that they've achieved so far. I'll then do a second round asking some slightly more detailed questions, but this is all about really bringing out what the projects are about and the success that they've achieved. So if I start with Matt and Marie for Dudley Metropolitan Borough Council and Project Rita, please can you tell me about the project, how it's affected the customers and community, and some of the outcomes that you've achieved so far?
Yeah, thank you, John, and thanks for being the first person in living history to get my surname right at the first time of asking. So Project Rita is tailored to the needs of the individual and the life history of the person using it. It's a connection machine that links your past with your future through images, music, stories, sensory experiences and more. It's a particularly powerful tool for people who struggle to communicate their own needs, such as people who have dementia or Alzheimer's. It was extensively tested and co-produced with people who've got care and support needs in a range of different settings, such as care homes, intermediate care facilities, hospitals, community settings and day services. And Rita enables unique therapeutic interventions to support loved ones. And I'll just hand over to my colleague Marie.
Hello everybody. So in terms of some of the outcomes with regard to Rita, with regard to evaluation, we liaised with our residential and nursing home providers. They completed the data in terms of some of the differences it made, and we wasn't expecting the picture to be as rich as it was. So we identified very quickly it provided fewer hospital admissions, there was less one-on-one safeguarding incidents. In terms of the increased quality of the provision, so care home staff said when somebody with complex needs, their behaviour was changing, they would use Rita as one of many options within their toolkits to support that person. So they'd either put a favourite song on, they'd put some sort of relaxing sundowning intervention on, and they were really able to engage with the individual. Informal carers also said it gave them an opportunity to have a meaningful conversation with their loved one. You know, they often struggled to actually get that communication, but through Rita, that enhanced their visits. And through the informal carers, they were able to develop life books, collages. So that care team really understood the history of the individual and were really able to engage. So we were able to accommodate more cost-effective placements, less requests from providers in terms of additional one-to-one support. We were able to support people on a cohort basis rather than on a one-to-one basis. Reduction in falls because people were engaged, less agitated. One home reported a reduction of 66% falls, another up to 70% falls. There was a service user placed in a very complex residential unit, very challenging behaviour. And working with one of the providers with Rita, we were able to support them in a new placement, and that saved we said cost avoidance was around 33,000, and that provider in terms of the evaluation said to us we were able to do that with another 5 people, that they were able to support their needs within New Bradley Hall. And also providers said rather than somebody's changing needs, looking to reassess, looking to relocate into another placement, they, with the support of Rita and everything it offered to the care team, were able to really support the individual with their changing needs. So some real powerful outcomes.
Right.
And we were being asked by providers, because we did a pilot to start with, to say, can we have Rita really engaging the market as well as the individuals?
Fantastic, thank you. Can I ask iESE Council Health and Social Care Partnership, Deborah and Lorraine, to do the same, please?
Morning, thank you. The assisted living development at Andrew Nisbet Place in Hurlford was developed through an iterative process. We already had one assisted living in place in the Kilmarnock area in East Ayrshire, and through an evaluation of that facility coupled with our housing asset management framework that was devised in 2016 by our multi-agency Future Homes Project Board, which is attended by the Health and Social Care Partnership, we identified the need for further assisted living developments. They were a priority identified in our strategic housing investment plan. And in year one in our priorities, we brought forward the Hurlford development that we're talking about today. And that project has delivered a 14-unit development, 13 individual flats, along with an on-site care provider space. And we took the opportunity to engage early on with the local community because we wanted to create a sense of place for the development. We wanted to create that placemaking within the wider community and look for acceptance of the build, but also the residents in terms of that being their new home. And I'm delighted to say the residents were very supportive. We met with residents and their representatives about a year beforehand to start that discussion. We undertook enabling works, listening to the residents about their concerns about what that build, that impact would have in their community. And we took forward enabling works prior to starting the build itself. And through a process of consultation with the wider community, right up to about a month before works were due to start, we were then able to deliver that model for the residents. I'll hand over to Lauren, but just to point out that we've now moved forward with that process and are now delivering more of those facilities as part of our plan. And again, it's an iterative process in that we're now developing a mini-scale version, and we're also developing a version that's a kind of hub and spoke, where we're now introducing scatter accommodation round about the build to try and extend that provision of care. And if I could maybe hand over to Lauren.
Thank you, Dave. Yes. Just to make a point that we managed to rehome,
individuals that we hope have actually from really, really challenging and complex care. And not only that, we've managed to use each as its own staff base. With this staff base, not only is it managed to look after and accommodate 30 individuals in the flat, we've spread out throughout the geographical location, working with our responder services. So typically within a 3 to 5 minute radius, we cover anything up to 10 to 15 homes. So not only is the responder covering the station that's situated in, it's also throughout the local community. And in doing so, we've managed to reduce people's package, increase independence. Just to put a figure on it, we've managed to save over £700,000 in doing so. This is a one-off saving, and what we would look at is, we could support packages as they become more and more independent throughout. The client, if you like, the service user is at the absolute forefront of any decision that's made for the partnership. They're engaged at every single monument along the way. They're asked about what they want their house to look like, any support from beyond and on. They're very, very excited about the fact there's another 2 or 3 support coming up in the next 5 years, as Deborah has mentioned. If we didn't have these supported accommodation, parents and guardians, when I speak about a parent of special needs group myself, particularly focusing on disability and mental health at the moment, we are expanding into community care, children and families, and it's absolutely the way to go. Accommodation highly sought after. Some of the models that there's actually people contacting me from all that's a bit of information. 24-hour care packages they're unsustainable. So in taking away and rehousing some of the individuals in the one complex, we're able to afford future supported accommodations, and also more importantly create some of those friendships where some of our individuals with finished care really struggle to make friendships on their own. That's the biggest thing that I've personally taken away from it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I ask Lancashire County Council for the capacity tracker, Ian and Samaya, to do the same, please?
Good morning, John. Thank you. As you know, COVID's had a devastating effect on the care sector, and in Lancashire we've also been disproportionately affected in terms of its effect on our community. The capacity tracker was really as a response to the need for situational data around the COVID situation, how it's affecting our care settings. We knew that providers were going to be having problems in terms of issues around PPE, food, medicine in those early days. And also all our Lancashire Resilience Forum wanted some assurance that our care homes and our care settings were safe, and the people that lived in them were safe. And so we mobilised almost overnight, really, a workforce that had been perhaps not being used in traditional ways. And so we took people from libraries, from people who look after the roads, and we got them to make calls, daily calls to all our care providers, in terms of to take those. To just make sure that they had all the right things that they needed. And then what we did was, behind the scenes, we built lots of pathways that we would then be able to respond. And subsequently, that's moved on from things like PPE to vaccinations and testing. And therefore, the outcomes of that, I'll let Samaya describe those.
Thank you, Ian. Good morning, John. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, thank you. As Ian says, the process that we went through was calling each of our care providers on a daily basis. And I think, at the time, COVID was affecting us in ways that we'd never really anticipated, and at a scale we'd never anticipated either. And there was this increasing need to be able to share information with regional, national colleagues, with the Department of Health and Social Care, but also with local partners to provide assurances that our services were continuing, they were safe, and that with the reduction in people going into care settings, i.e. professionals, that all our care providers had the support that they needed. So in terms of outcomes, in implementing the capacity tracker, we were able to ensure that our providers only had to provide one data capture, so there weren't multiple people asking them for information from various organisations, and we agreed with our partners that it would be ourselves that would take the lead on that. It meant that what that meant was that they could then continue on their kind of, what they're good at, which is caring for the people that they know and they look after on a daily basis, and they could focus on that really and make sure those needs were being met. What it also meant that obviously, because professionals weren't going into these settings as often as they would have done previously, the daily calls really allowed our care providers that opportunity to let us know how they were doing. So it also acted as a welfare call rather than just us collecting information. And we've had some really positive feedback from providers on that it was an opportunity for them to be asked how they were doing, and it really reinforced those messages for them in terms of that actually we were indeed in this together as a county, as a community, and as professionals looking after some of our most vulnerable members of our community. In terms of it also, Ian mentioned the pathways that we had in place behind the scenes. In terms of outcomes, it really meant that when providers were struggling, because the information was live and updated throughout the day, our contract management teams behind the background were able to then pick up issues as they were occurring and were being highlighted on our intelligence systems. And so if there was a provider that was reporting that they had issues around staffing, for example, we would then quickly be able to pick up the phone and contact our temporary staffing agency and be able to organise staff deployments. If there was a provider that said that they were struggling to source PPE, certainly in those initial stages, the early pandemic, we were then very quickly able to get onto our procurement colleagues to make sure that delivery went out straight away, really, and on the same day, within hours. And also, at a time when there was a lot of changing guidance around the pandemic, when providers would report cases to us, it really allowed us to then pick up that information in a timely manner and then be able to respond to it. And not only would that then help us with our kind of work, but it also provided reassurance to our providers that they, were doing the right things, that they were, and they could then provide reassurance to their staff and the people that they looked after, that actually they'd had that support, they'd had the guidance, and they'd put effective measures in place. And as we move through the pandemic, and and the challenges change, so as Ian mentioned, testing, vaccination, and then we also had the grant funding that was made available. We really changed and flexed our processes around the Lancashire Care Capacity Tracker to be able to respond to those changing needs. So we needed assurance around testing, for example, and that providers understood the guidance and were able to access the funding that they needed. So we were able to change some of the questions and the context of our conversations with our providers on a daily basis to kind of respond to those changing circumstances. And I think, and I think just kind of one last thing, just before we move on, is that there was a national need to have oversight and reassurance of the information, and how providers were doing, really. And what this meant with our care capacity tracker system was we were able to take that burden from providers and upload the data to national systems, so that nationally and regionally, and also our partners could have sight of that and ensure that things were being taken care of, without providers then having to go elsewhere to input that information, so they could do what they're good at. So, thank you, John.
Thank you. That's very good. Thank you. Can I go back to Dudley Metropolitan Borough Council and Project Rita, and ask Matt and Marie, can you describe the technology involved, or tell us a bit about the technology and how you chose the content so that it would have maximum effect for the individuals?
So the technology is a 24-inch touchscreen unit on wheels, and also Baby Rita, which is a small tablet. So in terms of the content, we worked with the company My Improvement Network, who did a lot of research around, different genres of music. There's obviously films. There is sit-down exercise classes in terms of people's health and well-being. There's games on there in terms of, people can undertake pig racing if they want to, which generates a lot of laughter. So they did a lot of research in terms of working in partnership with them. They'd done a lot of research around engagement, therapeutic interventions, and they'd engaged with also people across health and social care. So they've built preloaded content, so the technology doesn't need to be Wi-Fi enabled. It can be very quickly accessed for an individual, and we can also personalise it. So if you're engaging with an individual and they start to talk to you about that song being played at their wedding, for example, we can then capture that personalised information. So then if they're unsettled, if their behaviour becomes more challenging, they can go to that personalised content and initiate it very, very quickly. And the care staff have said that is very different to finding a song, getting that information very readily available to the person, which Rita does.
Just to add quickly to that, John, we didn't have a clue that when we started this project, a pandemic was going to come along. And obviously, it's been an ever more important lifeline for people to reconnect outwards with their families. And the work that My Improvement Network has done alongside us really has made a vital difference to people who otherwise would have been completely isolated and cut off from the world. And just finally, for the record, we're very proud to be probably the only shortlisted candidate to discuss pig racing this morning. Though I don't want to deprive any of my colleagues from the right to chuck that into the mix if they so choose. Thank you.
Thank you. If I turn to East Ayrshire Council and Health and Social Care Partnership, you are mainstreaming settings for adults with a range of disabilities. How does that play into things like assisted living? And on the other side, how's take-up going?
In terms of the delivery of their affordable housing supply programme, you're absolutely right. We're looking to try and create communities of interest. We know we've got a growing older population. We know people are living longer with more complex needs. And we want to try and replicate that when we're looking at our new build and our improvement programmes in terms of delivering that mix. So we're looking to a range of housing types across our new build developments, and we're recycling council assets as part of our transformation strategies. We're making use of sites that are no longer fit for purpose in terms of their current needs. So we're recycling them into the production of new homes for our residents, taking on board the current and emerging demographic. So we're looking to provide mainstream and particular needs homes. And the lessons learned that we have from our assisted living models, they are also being factored into that programme. As I've mentioned previously, we're looking at that kind of hub and spoke idea where we have the assisted living and then the scatter accommodation round about in small scale. And we're potentially looking at something on a larger scale in a forward programme, again, to try and meet the needs of our residents, but in a homely community setting. So we're taking on board dementia-friendly designs. We have the visual cues in our builds, and one particular build for older residents, we have that visual cue in terms of where their house is in the development. We're introducing outdoor seating into the front elevation to try and tackle issues of social isolation. So you can sit with your cup up, maybe not pig racing, but you can watch residents going by and have a chat with people. You can catch up with your neighbours where you would maybe feel less inclined to do so. You've literally just to walk out your front door and start talking. That there's that integrated feel about it. And we're trying to replicate that, as I say, across our mainstream programme and also into the assisted livings to try and engender that sense of place and community, which is really important for us, because it's all very well to build something that looks the part, but if it doesn't function, if it doesn't actually enable the residents to live their lives through their life circumstances, then for us it's not fulfilled its requirements. If you maybe hand over to Lauren.
Yep, thank you, Debs. So from a strategic housing point of view for challenging and complex individuals, we have two kind of main supported housing accommodation programmes. We have the Responder Hub, which I say is we take a series of kind of houses within that geographical location, maybe 3 to 5 minutes apart at the most. And from there we would have one member of staff in the hub at all times. This would generally be the most challenging and most complex individual where this person would be housed at all times. From there, we could link up to 3, 5. And some places in East Ayrshire, we've actually linked up to more than 20 houses onto one individual responder. Now, bear in mind, these people would generally need people in their own homes individually. So being able to link them with the one person is a massive, massive outcome for the partnership and for the individual themselves. So we have the Responder Hub, which is into the community, and we have the supported accommodation, which is the main complex all in the one building. The outcomes and the take-up has been absolutely fantastic. They're all the people that contact me almost on a daily basis. They're always wanting more. They're wanting a supported accommodation in their own town. The intergenerational working as well. We're managing to attend schools and pick up those transition cases. So our young people with learning disabilities and mental health issues, we're picking them up at the age of 13, 14, 15. We are planning for their supported accommodation into the future. And then at the opposite end of the spectrum, we've got 65 plus who are looking for the community care kind of aspect as well. And what we found works really, really well is the intergenerational housing. What you'll find is people really, really come on leaps and bounds when they're living next door to an 18-year-old and you've got a 65-year-old lady in the house next door. They really, really bounce off each other and make those relationships where absolutely would not happen in the outside world. So to answer your question, the outcome, the pick-up on it has been fantastic. We can't have enough supported accommodation as far as the partnership is concerned. So Debs, as much as you can provide, we will take it from housing.
Thank you. Turning to Lancashire County Council and the capacity tracker, Ian and Samaya, can you tell us, you've had an amazing sign-up of providers. How did you do that? And because you're sharing information, there are always technical issues. What have been the big challenges and how have you overcome them?
Right. Well, in terms of just to give you a scale of the size of Lancashire, we've got 430 residential care homes, and we've got about 200 community providers. And so, you know, as a size of the county as well, we're twice the size of Greater London. So you can imagine that to get that number of providers to sign up to the capacity tracker was quite an achievement. And the first thing we did was really just to say we would upload that information for you. We would act quickly. We would get everything that you needed. We would try and get for you. And also what we did was we introduced a weekly and fortnightly webinar. And in fact, the anniversary of the first webinar we did is tomorrow. And we invested in this.
Champagne.
Yes, we invested in this little kind of system called Zoom that none of us had ever heard of before. And so I think for them, they just wanted some assurance that they just needed to take the one call. At one point, all the partners all wanted to ring them and check that they were going to be okay. And so that was 4 or 5 calls. Some wanted them to self-upload systems in. And so we just said, we'll do that for you. You don't need to worry about it. That having said, you can imagine that we then had to make sense of that data, and so we used probably a quite traditional Oracle system, but then we were able to link that to business intelligence, and they were able to do all the Power BI. We've got dashboards that are so user friendly and everybody looks at. But then we also had to trying to work out how we would upload this into all the national systems as well.
Yeah.
And that was not without challenge, I have to say. Everybody is protective of their own systems, so a bit of gentle persuasion, I think, would enable us to be able to upload that into those national systems. That I think, therefore, the ministers and regional bodies have been able to look at, just have some reassurance that we're doing things okay. So I don't know if you quickly want to add anything to that.
Yeah, just in terms of, how we got providers on board, I think it was really being able to demonstrate what the benefits were for them as well, and what value this process that we're all entering in together could have for them and their service users and the people that they were supporting. And actually, I think, when they were raising issues with us about questions or data accuracy, as it was important that we then responded quickly to those concerns, so that actually they, when we called them again the next day, they were just as willing to support us and provide us with the information that we required. And I think it was really about them building on the positive relationships that we'd established just before the pandemic as well, and kind of building on that, and constantly going back to them and checking in that what we were doing made sense, and listening to them and changing things when they weren't going right for them.
That's great, thank you. Going back, I'm going to go through each of you. So Matt and Marie, you're going to go first. If you were starting again, what would the one or two things be that you would do differently, or would you just do it the same? And we've got about a minute and a half each. I'm going to ask each of you, but if you, with hindsight, and we never have the benefit of hindsight, what would you do differently, or would you just do it the same?
I would do two things differently. I'd have a longer running track for the pigs, given the level of interest that generated. But the other thing that I would do, I would change our assistive technology strategy, so all new care home builds hardwire in the interface for Rita as standard, so it becomes a default option. And I think I would also reconfigure our dom care contracts so that we can have the same level of functionality. Marie might want to add to that.
We obviously started with the residential and nursing homes, and we're now looking at how we bring that into the community through our carers network, so informal carers supporting their loved ones with dementia. If we had the time again, then I'd run that alongside the residential and nursing homes, because I think that would create greater resilience and more support for carers to carry on caring for their loved ones for longer. Because in COVID, we've used some of the smaller Ritas to support carers within their own home. So I would run that alongside the units next time.
That's brilliant, thank you. Deborah and Lorraine?
Thank you. I think I would, I like what we've achieved. I hope the residents like what we've achieved in Hurlford. And Lauren's telling us that to keep doing what we're doing, so that's good feedback. I think I would like to see in the future that better alignment. I think we can always work better, we can always work more closely, whether it's across the council and health and social care, or particularly with our residents and the communities, to better roll out that model and mainstream it. So in addition to having the assisted living model and trying to pick out elements into our mainstream programme, to see if we can try and bridge that gap between what's defined as mainstream housing and assisted living, to try and develop a more integrated model. We talk about lifetime homes, but trying to actually come up with something that's better value and better quality for our residents, from early life through to later life, that could be provided in the community and not need people to move from property to property to get the quality of care or the quality of home that they need. So I think that would probably be mine.
Okay.
Yeah, and just quickly from me, I think what the thing that we would do differently and we're going to do differently is start the kind of legal aspect of things a little earlier. A lot of our individuals with challenged and complex needs come with kind of corporate and private guardianship intervention orders, all required for a move. And what I didn't like to see was the all singing, all dancing, building up and erected, and some people moving in. But because of those legal constraints, some people were having to wait a few weeks or a few months until the process was ready for them to move in. So starting a lot earlier this time, and so that as soon as it's ready, they can get in and start getting decorated and make their new home a forever home.
That's great. And lastly, Ian and Samaya?
I don't think I'd change anything, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't have had COVID in the first place. I think we'd all kind of sign up to that. But, we had to mobilise almost at a week's notice. We had to mobilise a redeployed workforce of 200 people. We'd love to have given them extra training, but we just didn't have the time. So we probably made some mistakes along the way, but we did it in partnership with our providers. And honestly, I kind of wouldn't change a thing. The people behind the scenes were terrific, and everybody just pulled together, really.
Yeah. Okay, I do thank you very much. We have run out of time, but we're on time. So thank you. You're all worthy finalists. I do look forward to seeing the final outcome, but the depth of your projects is obvious. Your enthusiasm is obvious. And I thank you for your attendance today and for being such worthy finalists. I'll hand back to Andrew now. We will continue, but thank you very much indeed.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, John. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, John. Thank you all. So I'd now like to introduce the Working Together category. This category is for simplifying the way that residents and local businesses deal with public services, bringing together multiple contact points, removing the barriers between organisations and moving resources closer to the customer. And I'm going to just announce our winners for this category: Cheltenham Borough Council, Team Cheltenham Response, East Ayrshire Council Dignified Food Programme, and South Wales Police Estates Department. And I'm going to invite from Cheltenham Borough Council, Darren Knight, Executive Director of People and Change, Councillor Rowena Hay, Council Leader, and from East Ayrshire, Mark Hunter, Service Manager, Food and Catering, Melissa McCulloch, Vibrant Communities Team Leader, and from South Wales Police Estates Department, Richard Membry, Deputy Head of Estates and Facilities, and Samantha Collins, Estates Officer. Welcome, all of you. So I'm going to take the same format as previous categories. So I'm going to ask a few questions just so that you can bring out the story of your particular submission. We'll go around about 5 minutes each, and then subsequently come back again to ask some Q&A from each of you. So starting with our colleagues from Cheltenham Borough Council, Darren and Rowena, can you just give a bit of an outline of the project, how you involved customer and community, and what outcomes you've achieved to date? Go ahead, Darren. Rowena, I can't quite hear you. I don't know if this is distance from the microphone or not.
Shouldn't be. Is that any better?
It's very quiet.
That better?
Darren, do you want to kick off, and then whilst Rena's sorting out her mic?
Yes, I will do. Sorry about that, Andrew. The joys of online events.
That's right. The tech gods were going to come out sooner or later.
Yeah. Just to open up, we've learned sometimes that the simplest things mean the most. From delivering prescriptions and groceries to having a chat to someone who may have not had much contact with the outside world, the not so simple tasks of delivering millions of grants in weeks to businesses, asking the amazing people of Cheltenham not to hug, keep their distance and wash those hands has been challenging to say the least. Through bold initiatives, we've shown local and national leadership in supporting emergency response and recovery efforts, and being brave and pushing boundaries through innovation, sector-first initiatives and collaboration. By working with our partners, we've shown innovation in protecting communities, maintaining services, ensuring rapid business support, and leading recovery efforts. In terms of the work we've done with involving communities and customers, during 2020, we made full use of our strategic and operational partnerships, including G1st LEP, the Cheltenham BID, Cheltenham Borough Homes, the Cheltenham Trust, the Voluntary and Community Network, who helped inform our planning and approach, working alongside the council in supporting our residents, communities and businesses. We also benefited in November from mini RGA peer review, looking at our recovery efforts to give us some independent advice and perspective. In terms of outcomes, through our partnership working, we achieved many outcomes to support our residents, communities and businesses, and we're particularly proud of the range of rapid business support with some notable outcomes, including we were one of the first councils in the UK to get business grants out the door, and we did that by using our own cash balances because we recognised the worry that businesses would have in such a trying time. With regard to the discretionary business grant scheme, we realised that the money each council was given by government may not be enough to meet demand, and to remove the risk of a postcode lottery, we proactively brought several district councils together with advice from the LEP and the local bids. We created a scheme that would not only ensure consistency of criteria, but ensure maximum impact. This would normally have taken months to complete, but was developed within 3 weeks. Due to the thinking behind the scheme, we're able to add a 5th category in addition to those set out by BEIS to enable more businesses to qualify. And just to give a further flavour of the business support, we also extended our construction hours across the town to enable the construction sector to keep going before the government announced a similar initiative. And we also took a proactive approach to planning enforcement to allow to relax elements of planning enforcement to enable businesses to erect temporary structures, to allow for social distancing without the need of planning permission. And this work was highlighted by Have I Got Planning News for You? So that just gives a bit of a flavour of some of the work that we did and some of the outcomes we achieved.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Darren. Doreen, we'll try you again just to see anything you wanted to add to that.
I think we just have some technical problems, Andrew.
Okay, so we'll move on. If I can invite Mark and Melissa, do you want to come through the same and just describe your project and tell us what you've been getting up to?
Good morning, and thanks for inviting us along today. The Dignified Food Programme was all based around the impact of the possible impact on EU Brexit. It soon became apparent that we had a bigger issue with food poverty and poverty in general within East Ayrshire, and we always recognised that as something that we needed to do more about. So really, it was really through engagement with other partners, engagement with vibrant communities, third sector organisations, but making sure we had the right people around the table to see how we could take things forward. With the programme, it didn't just lend to our food larders and the food approach. It also lended towards how we engage with education, or other partners, food education programmes, and engaging with the community, because those food education programmes, we had members of the community come to those along with pupils in schools, and also healthy eating projects within the schools to try and tackle the change, I suppose, that was needed for young ones to realise that, they wanted to eat the right thing. But also that changed, so we really had to focus on the community side of things. And what we did as a council, we looked at ways that we could open the food larder or the community food, and the engagement we already had with the communities was very strong. And that was a lot down to a lot of work that was done by Melissa's team and Vibrant Communities initially. So we had those connections there, but it was really making sure that we had the right connections to be able to push this forward. So that led to us saying, right, how do we do that? We knew that FareShare's model was changing on how their membership was run. So the larders we did have within the communities, the membership was increasing. So we said, as a council, we will take that membership on from FareShare. We would then pick up the food from FareShare in Glasgow, and then we'd distribute it amongst our larders. So as they engaged, we distributed more food. to the larders, and that was done by our own drivers initially. But then, as the pandemic came along, that increased again, and over the I suppose the period between March and Christmas, we distributed over 55.5 tons of food from Fair Share, which would normally go to waste. So one, we were reducing surplus, but also two, we were able to provide food as a response initially. But that food larder is about sustainability, and that brings us on to the dignified way of when people are coming to a larder, they would like to pay a little bit towards what they're getting in a way that it's dignified, in a way they see as an individual person. And we treat those individuals as individuals when they're coming along. Nobody's any different. And it's not just open to people that may need it, it's open to anybody that wants to come along. So they've increased, and the food education programs, they'll start again. And the larders will continue to be supported by us, and again funded from part funding by our council as well, to take these forward and expand them, but in the line to make them sustainable. I'll just pass you over to Melissa, who'll talk about the engagement side of things that Vibrant Community are doing with the resilience groups and those coaching conversations that they have with them people, to pass them on to other organisations within our department for further support. Melissa.
Thanks, Mark. As Mark says, we've got a really strong record here in iESE of community engagement through our whole Vibrant Community section. So we have at present home link workers who were working in schools last year, who work directly with Mark's team to help with the whole agenda around holiday hunger and island programmes. And sports development workers were working in those as well. With regards to when COVID hit, because we had such a good relationship with our communities, we were able to get over 100 community resilience groups up and running really pretty quickly. And all of those groups have been helping to provide and distribute food throughout the whole of East Ayrshire within the towns and villages. As a council, we've helped support them through direct support from my team, the community workers, working directly with them, and we've provided now over £400,000 worth of funding to all of those groups to help with the food and to help with the establishment of the kind of community food larders. So I'll move on to talk about the larders more specifically. We had been looking at the model prior to COVID around community food larders. We had some really good examples already happening within East Ayrshire that were helping towards the kind of providing dignified food within our communities. It was something that we were wanting to take forward, but COVID has really helped to accelerate that for us within East Ayrshire. So we've got 13 larders at the moment. We had been hoping to have 15, but we've managed to get 13 up and running, supported directly by ourselves and by Mark's team, and through Fair Share as well. Some of the larders are operating with a more sustainable model, and that's where we're trying to move all of the larders so that when people come in, if they're able to pay, say, for example, some of them are any 5 items for £1, and kind of similar with the toiletries that's said as well. And some of them are at the moment, because we have provided grant funding, are still operating, just basically the community can come in and take away some of the food for free. So it's a completely dignified process. There's no questions asked. It's not means tested at all. Everybody coming is treated the same. And what's really great about these larders is it's completely community led. We support them, but it's the community volunteers on the ground that are giving up their time, that are coming in, they're opening up the buildings, they're dealing with all the food deliveries, and we're doing a lot of training with them just now as well around food hygiene. Mark's department has prepared a good practice guide for community larders, kind of wrapped around the food aspects. My community workers currently are working with them around another kind of good practice guide around governance and training and how to potentially constitute some of the groups moving forward so that they can in the future access external funding and not have to rely on council funding, but that's why we're looking at a sustainable model moving forward as well. So, well, as I said, we've got 13 ladders just now. Some of the ladders have got up to 200 local people who have become members and who are using the ladders regularly. And also, it's been a really good opportunity as well within the local communities, providing opportunities for people to come and volunteer. We've had so much enthusiasm. People are really want to do something to give back to their communities during COVID, so the ladders have provided an ideal opportunity for that as well. So really it's about making sure that nobody goes hungry in East Ayrshire and that everybody's got access to good quality nourishing food.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks, Melissa. Thanks, Mark. So I'm going to try to come back to our colleagues from Cheltenham, so Darren and Rowena. Hopefully, Rena, your mic's sorted out. Just to obviously you've had a highs and lows, not just in the technology now, but in the pandemic you've been responding to. Can you sort of talk through some of what those highs and lows were, and what any key learning points to date are for you from that?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Absolutely spot on.
I unplugged myself. Now, what happened there? So, as you can imagine, there were plenty of highs and lows, and well, plenty of highs and many lows during 2020. But in terms of our highs, one of them for me was the rapidly completed business as usual, and in particular for the case for the Minster Innovation Exchange. That was our number one shovel-ready project that identified by the LEP, by the National Getting Building Fund, which will be a major part in supporting our town's recovery. It's a £5.2 million flagship scheme right in the heart of Cheltenham Town Centre, and it will move forward quicker than planned thanks to funding of just over £3 million. But what it will deliver is the utilisation by 50 of the region's cyber tech businesses, a social value of 3 million up to 5 million, visitors around 10,000 per annum, 75 new jobs, carbon neutrality, repurposing the high street. So then we turn to the lows. In terms of the lows, probably the challenge of balancing so many competing priorities actually over such a long period of time was a huge challenge. And at the same time, people working remotely. And it's that, the revenues and benefits, if you like, doling out the money and the grants, that's not their day job. So they were managing 5 or 6 of those at the same time, as well as doing the day job. And what you can't, with the remote working, is the importance of human contact. You can't underestimate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So our key learning points, I think, when I was listening before, it was like, what would we do differently, having had the experience that we've had? And I'd actually say we wouldn't do anything differently. But I think in terms of learning points to take forward, it's having the confidence and the ability and the innovation in our organisation to support and encourage and empower people to think differently, and making time to celebrate successes, especially when there were many tough times.
Yeah.
The staff and councillors really appreciated all the welfare calls, because as we set up a welfare call within our parties to each other, and with obviously with the staff as well. And I, as leader, joined the staff sessions once a week or once a fortnight. They were, and that's, we had 99% of the staff were there, and it was talking really about Team Cheltenham, I guess, which actually might sound a bit cheesy, but our one team approach of councillors and officers and our partner organisation all working as one team, and the impact of that, I wouldn't want to. Well, I can't underestimate that at all.
Yep.
And the role of local government was even more important, and the time and effort historically invested in our partnership working really showed showed the benefits.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Rihanna. Thank you. We'll turn next to our college meets there. So Mark and Melissa again. You've actually got a bigger track record than just responding to the pandemic. You've been working on your supply chain of food locally for some time. How important was that to you in this time of crisis, and how did you actually go about developing it in the first place? And that's one question. The other one is about language, because we've seen a number of your awards over the years, and your language is very particular, and you talk about dignified food. I think last year was respectful funerals. What does that language mean to you, and how important is that to your communities?
Well, I'll cover the food side of things, and then Melissa can cover the way we word things. I suppose it goes back to what I said before we've always had very good connections with local suppliers. It's something that we've always aimed at, and with the longest serving holders of the Gold Award on the Food for Life. So it's very important to us. It's about community wealth building. It's about engaging with those suppliers. But more so during the pandemic, we kept some of those suppliers going. And also the way we had to do the food over the past year was all based on domestic sized products. Our normal suppliers, as in the bigger suppliers that we use, that's all industrial sized products that we would normally use. So we had to adapt in ways that sort of met what we needed to do, and have those connections locally, like the fresh eggs or fresh meat or veg. We were able to engage very quickly with them and say, we knew they weren't delivering to the normal shops and hospitality sectors. We say, okay, what can we do for you? And it was a matter down to engaging with them, even down to the packaging that the eggs came into. Normally they come in trays. We says we need them in half dozen boxes so we can send them out with food boxes. It is always about that engagement. But because we had that engagement, it was easy to turn things around very quickly, and we managed to do that very quickly. And towards the August period, we delivered in the region of 690,000 meals in accordance with that, and that was by using mostly local suppliers, but engaging with them and then rolling it around. But also the fair share food that came in, we did have to buy additional stuff to support the need and the demand that we had at the time. But the fair share food came in items that we were able to distribute or split into smaller packages to be able to deliver the food boxes or the parcels or the meals, because we did do different things. We did cook meals at the very beginning, we did pack lunches, and we did food boxes over the whole period. That's how we evolved over the different sort of restrictions that came upon us. But we'll always do that, and we'll always engage very closely with suppliers to make it work, because I don't think we've been able to adapt very quickly if we didn't have that local supplier input and knowledge, I suppose, of how they could turn around our demand.
Yeah, brilliant. Melissa?
Just talking about language. Language is really important because within iESE, as is culture, the kind of culture that's been created here and the culture that's developed. So when we're engaging with our communities, or we're doing anything with communities, we're very mindful of how we do that, and about the consultation process that we use. We always put our kind of strapline is we put our communities at the heart of everything we do. I'll always use, when I'm doing a piece of work with some of the groups I'm working with, it's always kind, caring and connected. So the dignified food and the respectful funerals, that just follows off from the culture that's been created here. And it's really important for us here within iESE, working with our communities, that people feel that they've been treated with respect. And especially around the dignified food, because we know that there's a lot of stigma that's attached, and sometimes there's a lot of shame that's attached to that as well, through no fault of an individual who has to access one of our larders. So that's why we try and keep it. We're trying to promote moving forward that all of the larders are adopting the same membership system and a kind of sustainable model, so that you don't know if people are standing in a queue, you don't know who's able to pay and potentially who's not able to pay. So it really is very important for us within iESE about the language that we're using.
Brilliant, thank you. And finally, turning to Richard and Samantha, you've obviously got together quite an unusual range of people in terms of your collaborations. That's a bit of a first. How difficult was it to get a common specification for what you were doing, given such different services that you're collaborating with, and how did you kind of transition from that old, perhaps less joined up facilities and world to the new one?
Well, good morning, everybody. Andrew, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to include our introduction as part of our answer to these questions.
Sorry,
that's okay, no problem at all. South Wales Police has a 10-year estate strategy focused on how we put the right accommodation in the right place at the right price with the right people in this accommodation. At one stage, we actually had the second largest policing estate of all the police forces in the country. So it gives you an idea almost of our starting point. We had a large estate, a lot of it not in the right place, a lot of it old, and a lot of it needing a lot of money to repair. To give you one example of what we've done is our Llantwit Major example. Llantwit Major is a beautiful coastal town on South Wales, where we had 4 agencies working individually in properties in older buildings. We had the fire service, the police service, the ambulance service, and the Coast Guard. Each one of our buildings had condition survey works to get them up to a required standard, had large running costs, and were old buildings and just really not showing the public what the emergency services are all about. So we've got together with all the partners and we looked at what options are available to us to create one blue light emergency services station within the town. But it's not just about sharing space. It's about working together. It's about how we get everybody to provide a better service to the public. I've seen loads of accommodation where people have just moved into accommodation and then people don't even share the basics. We're talking about what services do we actually need as a uniform group? Do we need dry-in rooms? Well, let's put one dry-in room to accommodate everybody. Do we need locker rooms? Well, let's do the locker rooms to accommodate everybody. Let's do a service that actually provides full integrated working. As you can imagine, this doesn't happen overnight. And it is about communication. And it's also about the endorsement of our teams, our chief officer teams who are extremely behind this, our police and crime commissioner, our estates department, and the partners that we work with, and getting everybody together to discuss everything before we actually move. But it's also about the community and engaging with the community. So it's about how we engage with the public from our Welsh Government, where we've got a Stadau Cymru working group, so we engage with the government session, but also down to engagement with local town councils, to engagement with the PCSOs who are working the streets, the neighbourhood teams who are working with the community, the fire officers, the Coast Guards who are actually in the community, who understand what the people need. So that was a lot of work. However, what we've got is a single building, the sharing of services, and really effective partnership working. I think that one example, when I was in the building recently, I was talking to one of the officers and he said, the main thing, he said, if we're attending an instance, like for example, we attend a road traffic collision, you're now attending a road traffic collision with people you know. You're attending it with the fire service. Well, not just the fire service, it's Rod, Jane, Freddie who work for the fire service. You know them, you work with them. You've got a day-to-day working relationship with them. We share intelligence with them. We share, you're sitting there having a cup of tea in the morning, then you're out on site developing together. It's a complete way of working. It's also a commitment to the people of Llantwit Major to show that the police are care about your community and are here to stay. So are the fire service, so are the ambulance, so are the Coast Guard. We're here to stay, but also we're here to deliver the best public service that we possibly can. Yes, we've had the building done and it's a lovely building with all new furniture, new setup, and everybody's working together. And we've actually started, the running costs have been significantly reduced. We've got a potential income now coming of £250,000 for the sale of just our building. We've got a cost avoidance of £200,000 for the work, the condition survey works that we didn't need to do on Llantwit Major Police Station. But for me, all this money saved, linked then to our new ways of working, where we put in agile working, more technology into the offices. It's more about our officers being available and more time on the streets. So it's more people on the streets, more officers, more PCSOs and everything on the streets to provide a better policing service for Lantwick Major. But the one thing I would sort of take from this is Lantwick Major is just one example for us. We've taken this and we've developed it. So one of the questions about how would you change in the future is, well, for the next models, we've actually looked at, in Llanedin, we've moved into a community hub. The community hub there is with the local authority, so it's a different partner again and providing service. In Llanishen, we've turned the bottom of our police station, of a two-floor police station, into a library. So now the council have moved in and providing library service, internet access to the public within our buildings. That is making us more accessible than ever to the public, who can come in and do a number of tasks in one go. But that's not the end of it for us. We're also developing Bridgend in partnership with the local college, Merthyr with the bus station, Seven Sisters, Penlan, Cowbridge. It goes on and on and on. So for us, Lantwick Major was an excellent example, but it's a really good example for us of how we actually change the way we're policing moving forward, because they're about being in the right place at the right time to deal with these incidents. But again, the right cost to it reduces our estate, but puts our people available to the public to provide the best possible service. A lot of people have been involved in this, and again, from across the force and across our partners. And everyone we do, we're making improvements. But I think for us, this definitely shows a way forward where it's not an old traditional police station no more. It's a community-based police station and a community-based service for our public, and how we can bring in as many partners as possible into that to deliver the best possible service.
That's a phenomenal impact of one project and then rolling into a programme. That's brilliant. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that, Sam, in terms of the project, or in terms of how you've transitioned to the new facilities, or anything to add to Richard's comments?
Well, my part in it was mainly about transition into the new service. I was on the ground helping everybody move in smoothly. We did this by ensuring that we kept everybody up to date. We held regular meetings, and we wanted to make sure that when the move happened, that they were back online with as little as disruption as possible. As Richard mentioned, in our estate strategy, we're going to be disposing of about 53 stations in the future. Lantwick Major is just one of them. On a larger scale, we recently moved 58 staff from one area to another. They were up and running within 4 hours. It's down to how smooth and slick we are now at planning and communicating with everybody involved.
That's brilliant, thank you. My apologies for not drawing you in earlier, and thank you, Rowena, for wrestling with the technology to ensure that you could join us properly. I think that the submissions you've got are all fantastic, worthy winners. We'll see you again, I hope, face to face in September, when we'll be awarding the gold, silver and bronze between you. But just phenomenal work, just demonstrating how we as a public sector do actually work together with our communities, with our supply chain, and with our public sector partners. So thank you for your submissions, and thank you very much for your